different, they have a different history, they have different traditions, they have different expectations, different outlook, and so I'm a little reluctant for us to run around sort of ham-handedly applying our standards of whether it's human rights or whatever to the rest of the world. But then there's a part of me that just says, if you're going to be, if this is important to you from an ethical basis, it's really tough to compromise. So I guess I'm conflicted.
True.
But being a little bit more of a pragmatist than an idealist, I just kind of think if, the issue with China is evolutionary. I mean, in the last, 40 years since, Nixon opened up China to the West again, things have changed a great deal. And I usually see the push for democracy as being driven more by economic factors than anything else. People like money. They like to make it. And when they start doing it, well, then they begin to have other expectations for their lives. And, a central control by a governmental authority usually flies against the economic forces that are driving it. And a government can't afford to ignore the economic forces because they need money too. So I think, the answer is to look at the China issue as a long play. It might be another 50 years, it might be 100 years, but eventually, the economic forces have a tendency to be self-leveling throughout the world.
So in the end, you're saying that it'll figure itself out, it'll balance itself out.
Yeah, the current crop of leaders needs to, die or retire and be replaced by people who are perhaps a little bit more open-minded. And
I think that could be said for most government foundations, is that there's too many white-haired people in the chairs.
Yeah, and being somebody who's beginning to get a few white hairs, it's making me nervous from that aspect. But it basically is going to require a younger crowd to come in, just like it did, with Mao and his, leadership team have pretty much been replaced by, if we want to call it, Gen 2 China leadership. And when we get to Gen 3, I think it's going to be whatever form of government it takes. It's going to look very much a lot more democratic than the system that they have currently.
Sure, that makes sense. I could definitely see that happening. Whether it's influence from the West or just the influence of the evolution of culture as a whole. Eventually, you're right. People like money, and they'll do what it takes. They'll change the government over if it means getting more cash.
Yeah, it seems like, when you look through the back across the history of the world, and going way back, the creation of a middle class, of, a prosperous middle class, generally has, in every occasion, caused, monarchy or, central leadership type of governments to be, over time, to be replaced by something that's more participatory. And I can't see that China would somehow miss that. There's just too much money washing around in China now for central control to have much more of a lifespan.
Sure, absolutely. Moving on to the Android issues and thinking of money and moving forward with technology, I've said it before that I could definitely see Microsoft retreating to the business sector because that's what Microsoft does well. I think they've missed the mark when it comes to addressing home users. Yes, I think Windows 7 is fantastic, and the new Windows Phone 7 is certainly going to breathe new life into certainly a dying a breed of Windows smartphones. But Android is interesting because they do a good job at addressing corporate life as well as consumer life. And iPhone, I don't see it really doing a whole lot with... Apple's really not done a lot with corporate solutions, whereas BlackBerry's certainly been geared towards there, but people are getting kind of fed up with BlackBerry, I think. And when they see how much fun people are having with Android. Now, you own a BlackBerry.
Yep.
What's been your impression with using that device?
Well, I'll tell you, I have had two BlackBerries. I had a kind of a base model, the 8700, that had the old jog wheel navigation and what have you. And personally, after owning it for about 3 weeks, I couldn't understand what all the excitement about BlackBerry was. It seemed a little clunky and hard to work, hard to navigate. At the same time that I acquired that, we had moved our whole cell phone service from Sprint to T-Mobile, and my son, who's 23, had purchased the G1, the first Android phone, and his phone absolutely blew away the BlackBerry that I was carrying. I mean, there was a serious case of phone envy going on, and it wasn't, it was from me to him, and I had to replace my BlackBerry in December, and I ended up going top of the line with the 9700 BlackBerry Bold. And the two phones aren't even in the same class. BlackBerry Bold is a much more exciting phone, much more functional, has a lot more easy to navigate, better feature set. The screen is so crisp and clear, I can't believe it's as small as it is. And it does a better job of navigating the web and displaying, non-mobile websites with a reasonable degree of usefulness. But I will say that the Android phone my son carries just absolutely rocks all the way around. It's a fabulous piece of work. And now that we're up to like 4 or 5 Android-based phones out there, yeah, that there are, that's just far and away a better phone. I have become a huge Google fan over the last 3 or 4 years. I think that they're very smart. They're moving in the right direction, and I really expect to see Android as becoming a major factor, not just in the phone market, but as an alternative operating system for netbooks and eventually computers and laptops, and competing against certainly against Apple and Linux as a second or third place operating system, and maybe really making some inroads after Microsoft, after some time's gone by. I think Microsoft has to be on their toes. Microsoft came out with the new smartphone platform primarily because they were being passed by everybody, including Palm, with their new, the new Pre and the other phones that they've come out with lately. And they just, they either had to get back in the game or get out of the game. So.
Right. When you looked at, I had a Windows Mobile phone with Windows 6, and some of the screens were identical to my Pocket PC from 2003. And it just was absolutely ridiculous that they're using this arcane architecture. At the time, in the early 2000s, it was revolutionary, it's fantastic. And then they just never changed it. And that's always been Microsoft's problem, is that they never changed anything. They're copying and pasting code, i.e., I reference again the 17-year-old kernel bug that should not have made it into Windows 7 even. So, yeah, and I think just that Android, like you were saying a little bit, we were talking a little bit before the show, and you said Google makes it very easy to build an empire. And when you have your Gmail and your Google Analytics and your Google Reader and your Android-based phone, you've got this device that taps into that empire and makes it insanely easy.
Yeah, as time's gone by, I've built a collection of web assets on Google. My blog's on Google. I'm doing AdWords with Google. There's just so much. I finally signed up for a Gmail account the other day because I couldn't figure out why. Oh, Google Voice, holy cow. I've got a Google Voice account, and
how'd you get one of those?
Well, I got an invitation from a pal who sent me a invitation. I guess I could send you one.
I think I need an invite because I've applied, but I haven't gotten my invite yet.
Yeah, and the part that's really kind of nifty is I set it up so it replaced my cell phone voicemail, and so Google captures the voice messages. I get an email sent to my laptop, which not only allows me to see the voice to text conversion, which is really kind of nifty, although some days what Google thinks it heard is pretty funny. And
Literally the telephone game.
but there's a a clickable link on the email that lets you hear the voicemail. So